Joining me right now to discuss this, Scottie Nell Hughes, news director of the Tea Party News Network, and Rick Ungar, senior political contributor for Forbes.com and host of Steele and Ungar on Sirius XM POTUS Channel 124. Thank you both for being with us today.
Sure, man. Good morning.
All right, Rick, this bill that the House did wind up passing, is this a gift for Democrats?
It may be a gift for Democrats, but it's certainly no gift for the country. This is a situation that actually required real action. All the House did was create something that they could go home and tell their fans that, hey, we did something, we got serious, when in fact they knew all the way along that it was dead on arrival in the Senate, and certainly the president wasn't going to sign it. It's disappointing because we really do need to deal with the situation.
And Scottie, what do you say to that? Because I know a lot of folks in these grassroots groups, Tea Party groups, said, no, the Senate, or the House rather, should not do anything at all.
Actually, that's the truth. Well, we didn't want to do anything, but you know what? What they did was exactly what the American people are asking them to do, which actually 65% of Americans right now disapprove of how the president and this administration has handled the immigration crisis. And so the Republicans, the House Republicans, actually acted like they were supposed to. It shows that the Democrats in the Senate, as well as President Obama, are throwing their little temper tantrums as expected. And they're the ones saying, nope, we're not going to act with them because they didn't give us anything that we wanted. Well, this is called when we start to actually go to the table and we start working together. But right now, what we've done up until now is we've given the Democrats everything they've wanted on every other piece of legislation. So for once, we're actually acting like the adults we elected them to be.
All right, Rick, hop in there. What do you say?
Well, this is the problem. I mean, it always comes down to this discussion of Republicans versus Democrats. And in the meantime, a real problem goes untouched and unsolved. Look, I mean, Scottie's right when she says that 65% of the country aren't happy with the way the president's handling this. But I think a larger number are unhappy with the way Congress is handling it because they are not handling it. Nobody's handling it. So as long as we're caught up in this, oh, it's good for the Republicans, oh, it's good for the Democrats, I assure you, it's bad for the country. And that's where we sit today after this House vote that accomplished absolutely zero.
And while nobody's handling the situation, Rick Perry, the governor of Texas, pointed out the fact that there have been a record high number of arrests of immigrants from countries with quote-unquote terrorist ties. Scottie Nell, we know that the GOP has been highlighting the security concerns about this, but Rick, real quick, before we get to Scottie, I want to get your take on what Perry was saying there.
Well, look, I mean, theoretically, he's got the facts, and I suspect he's being honest, so that certainly bears taking a look at. Look, you know, Governor Perry, I don't often agree with him, but he has in the past taken a fairly humane point of view towards the immigration situation, and for that reason, he's earned credibility in my mind when it comes to some of the things he's talking about now. We should pay attention to him. We should find out if he's got it right. I suspect he probably does, and we should respond to it.
Now, Scottie, this is the issue that this really hinges on, right? Do you see more Democrats talking about Rick Perry the way we heard just a second ago from Rick Ungar?
Well, especially if they're up for re-election, then yes, we're hearing them kind of talk like Rick Ungar. You know, if you notice, there's one word that most Democrats who are up for re-election that are actually in contested primaries are not saying, and that's the word immigration. You're seeing them stay as far away from this issue because they know what their party lines have been up till now, and this president is the one that has basically caused this humane crisis along our border, and Rick Perry is just responding to it. He's stepping up and he's showing leadership. And yes, while I agree with Rick in the fact that yes, we have a major issue, and what the House did is mainly caused us to come to a stalemate because DC isn't going to solve it, a real simple solving would be for both parties and the president to get together and say, you know what, let's give the money directly to the governors that are these border states. Let's let them handle the money and crack down, use their state guards to crack it down. That would be an immediate issue. But the problem is that what happened here is that you've got the Republicans saying, here's the plan, we've given it to you. And the Democrats, instead of saying, you know what, we're going to come and take the plan you have and we're going to come back at you with something, they've just said, nope, not going to do it. And you have the president so quick to pull out his pen and his phone and ready to use. That right there doesn't sound like anything like the president said about working together.
Yeah, we're waiting to see what
we don't really know that yet.
He's already come out and said, I'm not afraid to work alone on this.
Well, we'll see what he does. We heard Dan Pfeiffer talking about that yesterday. But I also want to talk about somebody who obviously sees what's going on in the polls, and that's Marco Rubio. Of course, Rubio, during the initial discussion on the Senate Gang of Eight immigration bill, talked about the need to perhaps normalize or provide a path to citizenship for many of these illegals when they were first talking about it back in 2013. Right. But then I want to play something from Rubio more recently and get everybody's reaction on the back end. Let's take a listen.
We have a very serious situation on the border, an unsustainable situation on the border that cannot continue. The only way to address that is to address the root causes of what's happening. And the root causes are a combination, of course, of violence and instability and poverty in Central America. But it's also, according to the president of Honduras, ambiguities in our laws. And those ambiguities began in 2008 with a very well-intentioned law to prevent human trafficking and address it. And then it continued in 2012 with the president's Deferred Action Program.
But, Scottie, on the same hand, some folks might say it was Rubio and the folks who supported that Senate immigration bill which potentially could have created this pathway to citizenship, which also forced some of these folks to come here. Is Rubio going to have to defend himself against being called a flip-flopper here?
Listen, he is going to have to, but I will tell you, the one person that's paying the most for this immigration debate right now is Marco Rubio. If he would not have gotten involved in that Gang of Eight bill, we probably would already be printing out the Rubio for President 2016 stickers amongst the Republican Party. He was anointed as our savior up until this Gang of Eight immigration bill, which I give him some grace for. But now that, in fact, that, if he'll just come out, all he has to do if he wants to save any sort of credibility with the Republican Party and those conservatives that do not like this immigration bill is just apologize for his stance. That's one of those things that he learned his lesson, and you know what, be called a flip-flopper on it, but make sure there's an apology attached to it. Rick will be the first to tell you, Democrats sometimes, the ones that people understand, they forgive, they have to ask for forgiveness first. And Democrats usually are a lot more forgiving than sometimes Republicans can be. But you have to at least ask.
All right, Rick, real quick, yes or no answer. Does Rubio apologize here, or should he?
Well, no, I don't think he should, but Scottie had it exactly right. How often do I get to say that? He's had to backpedal ever since he took a fairly heroic stance, I thought, at the time, in going along with it. And I also agree with what he said in the piece you just played, except that it's not an ambiguity in the law. It's the way the mules down there are selling it to people in Honduras, Guatemala, to make some money by trying to bring them over the border.
Fair enough. I also want to get you guys to weigh in on this bombshell coming out of the CIA, the agency admitting that it spied on the Senate Intel Committee. Rick, we've heard Democrats, including Udall in Colorado, call for the resignation of John Brenner. How big of an election year issue does this become for Democrats?
There's so many things like this that I suspect it doesn't become a big election issue. I think it's absolutely horrible. And I don't know any Democrats who don't think it's horrible. It was terrible. But I suspect in the line of things that are going to play a role, this will probably be somewhat down the line.
Scottie, Nell, does this come into play in the Colorado race and the Senate race there, maybe others?
I don't think it's going to come into play, but I think this is going to change policy. Feinstein was one of the women that brought this out, and she's obviously one of the leaders of the Democratic Party. She's the one that pointed this out, and her truths came to fruition. They were true. So this is something, I think this is a great chance for both parties to work together, because the policies need to change. If the CIA has this much power, which we all knew they did, there needs to be policies put in place that this doesn't happen in the future.
And what do you think, Scottie?
Yeah, I agree with that. Mm-hmm. And I just want to say that the way the CIA is behaving, they are heading down the road to another church commission. Those of us who were around in the 70s remember that.
Sure.
That didn't turn out to be good for the CIA or the country.
Scottie, now, do you think that's the only way, really, now that the government, maybe the Senate Intel Committee, and folks at large as a whole can gain confidence in the CIA? Does there need to be some sort of blue ribbon panel, as Rick was discussing there?
Well, anything we know that goes on C-SPAN usually is just for show. And so whether it's a blue ribbon panelist or anything else is not good. But the key is across the board. I mean, this is just shows between the IRS targeting, between the secrecy of everything else being disclosed. We need this across the board. So if the Senate gets their privacy protected, so does the American people.
Fair enough. Rick, you agree?
I agree with that. Yeah, I do. One thing I would add, that we do have to be a little bit careful. All these cries for Brennan's resignation. Look, I know it feels good in the near term to do that, but this is a time when we need the CIA to be stronger, not weaker. Let's not start kneecapping them by taking the top guy out, who probably didn't even know this was happening.
Fair enough, but definitely not looking very strong in his response when asked about it prior. At least some fence mending needing to happen there between the CIA and the Senate Intel Committee. Scottie, Nell, Hughes, Rick Ungar, thank you both for being here with us on America's Floor.
Pleasure.
All right, much more to come here on the program today. We want to get to your questions again coming up, or your comments to our questions on the top issues of the day. We'll be back with more. And plus, we're going to have a discussion on Obamacare. New poll numbers don't say the American people not too happy with the way things are going What will the Obama administration do? What will Congress do? We're back with more after this.